Cory Booker is in the studio.
It's good to be back in Atlanta.
Yes, it is, and it's good to see you, Senator.
Yes. Listen, my parents lived here for about 20 years.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. This was synonymous with my mom's cooking.
All right.
Best cornbread stuffing you will ever taste. So it's good to be back in the city.
Okay, well, we've got a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Obviously, our time is limited because I could take 2 or 3 hours.
I'd love to stay here all morning.
You know?
When I was driving over here and listened to you dropping some Beyonce, I was...
Oh, yeah. Come on now. You know we love Beyonce.
I love that, too.
That's cool.
You're right. That would be the summer jam.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Okay.
Let's do this because the biggest news in the country is obviously in about an hour and a half.
Yes.
The redacted version of the Mueller report will be released. You are on, the committee to make sure that justice is served.
The Judiciary Committee.
What is your opinion about this Mueller report and what's been going on and the hiding and the fact that even now they're saying the White House got a chance to discuss it before it's released at 9:30?
Let's just go back a little bit.
Okay.
When Bill Clinton was under investigation, and Kenneth Starr came out with a report. Literally, the next day after he finished it, it was made public. In total, it was in every paper in the country. And so here we have 27 days since this report was done. It's been filtered through someone who's acting not like the independent attorney general, but like the personal lawyer of Donald Trump. And now, even before he's releasing it, first he gives a few-page summary that people, even that did the investigation, you heard reports that they were upset with the way he portrayed it. Now, again, he's going to be redacting parts of it. It's going to be filtered through someone who is, in many ways, behaving in a way that really delegitimizes his office. So I don't know what's in the report, but I know the public demands the full report, and we're going to see what happens when we get it in a matter of hours. Now,
let me ask you this, for everybody listening. Legally, according to the Constitution, do you have a right to see the full report?
There is a reason why some parts could be redacted, but we are going to do everything, and a lot of these things have to be worked out through the court process to make sure that we see the full report.
Okay. As we begin our interview with Senator Cory Booker, the first question we have for Atlanta, who's Cory Booker?
Who are you?
Who am I?
Besides us matching, we're twinning right now, guys. Blazers and jeans.
Listen, for me, my life starts with faith and family. You know, I'm a son of 2 amazing African-American parents. My mom went to Fisk University. She's grew up in, she was born in Detroit. My grandfather, he worked on the assembly lines, L.A. to Fisk. My father's North Carolina boy, grew up in the mountains of North Carolina. In a segregated town, went to North Carolina Central. He's an Eagle, and raised 2 boys to understand where they came from and how we got to where we are. As my father said, boy, don't walk around this house like you hit a triple. You were born on third base. You are a product of struggle. You're a product of sacrifice. You're a product of folks who bled for you, died for you, scrubbed floors and toilets for you. And you can't pay those things back. You got to pay it forward. So when I went out and got all my degrees, my daddy looked at me and said, boy, you got more degrees in the month of July, but you ain't hot. You ain't hot. Life is not about the degrees you get. It's about the service you give. So after I finished Yale Law School, I went right into inner city Newark, New Jersey, picked one of the toughest neighborhoods there were. And I began working to represent people to fight slumlords. And I always say life is about purpose, not position. My purpose has been the same since I began my career. Fight for people, with people, in order to create justice and opportunity for everyone. I still live in that inner city neighborhood today. I'm the only senator, the only presidential candidate who lives in a low-income black and brown community below the poverty line. But we banded together in that community and brought a supermarket into a food desert, new schools that have made us the #1 school system in America for kids who are in poverty to make it to college. We are now also a city that has had a massive economic development, resurgence, because I was the mayor of a city, and I look towards Atlanta examples. People like Maynard Jackson. I wanted to be a mayor that made a city come back for the people that live there. So from African-American, Latino businesses thriving in our city, first new hotels being built in our city where local folks built those hotels and got the jobs there. And then after turning around a city with a community, went to Washington and said, I'm going to fight for the issues that are really important to my community. In fact, the only major bipartisan bill that's gotten through the Washington under this president was the one that I led on the Democratic side with Dick Durbin for criminal justice reform called the First Step Act.
Okay.
So my dad and mom, my dad who died 6 days before I became a senator, I hope he's looking down in heaven and say, you've stayed loyal to the reasons why you got into office as a city councilman in Newark, New Jersey, and you've stayed loyal to the cause of our country, which is to be who we say we are. I always say, before you tell me about your religion, first show it to me and how you treat other people.
Right.
But
Right
we have
on.
a civic gospel that all of us say in our songs, our pledge, our anthem. When we say those words, liberty and justice for all, what are you doing about that? Because we don't have justice for all now.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
And so that's my cause, is to keep fighting to make sure we are a nation of inclusion that brings people together in common cause to make this nation live up to its promise.
You know, when you look at what is presidential pedigree,
Yes, sir.
because JR has a question to ask you,
Yes.
but when you look at what is presidential pedigree, I see that in you. I see Stanford. I see Rhodes Scholar, going to Europe to study. I see going to Yale Law School. I see the high school football star. There was a tight end.
Yes,
I
sir.
see the track and field star. Like, you are this presidential pedigree when you think about the great presidents and the way they got into office. You're well-rounded. You were the school president.
Yes, sir.
While you were the high school football star.
Amazing.
Now, if you go and get to the presidency, you are going to be compared. So, JR.
Oh, we
But hold on, Jerry, can I just say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
The radicalness of what you just said. Because why that's radical? I'm only the fourth popularly elected African American to the Senate in the history of our country.
Amen.
And the fact that you say a presidential pedigree, sitting here, two African American men saying that, we've got to stop and pause and understand where we are in American history.
Yeah.
That the fact that you said that the presidential pedigree of a guy coming from my background, that is now just something that's assumed, is a major testimony, not to us in this room,
Of where we've come from.
of where we've
Yes.
come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
James Baldwin says in his book Fire Next Time, human history and American Negro history is in particular a perpetual testimony to the achievement of the impossible. And so my parents would raise me to understand that you are living impossible dreams, dangerous dreams that were even to articulate just generations ago. And that should firm your commitment to make sure that your grandchildren can one day say, we're living dreams that were seemed almost impossible for us. And that's what you put your finger on, the blessings that I've received. To he who much is given, much is required.
Amen.
In my lifetime, even growing up, I never thought that we would see an African-American black president.
Yes, sir.
How would you deal with comparisons of people who look at you and just go, oh, this is another black guy we could potentially vote for down the line? What makes you not be Barack Obama?
God, I mean, we're very different human beings, and I never sweat that question at all, because my job every single day is to get up and be the boldest, authentic version of myself. You know, Barack Obama and I have different pathways. You know, I had to run a city through a recession. I mean, I was a chief executive of New Jersey's largest city. That is very different than President Obama, who came up being a state senator, and we've had very different pathways to the Senate. In fact, I am only the 21st American, according to the Wall Street Journal, that's ever gone from being a big city mayor directly to being a United States senator. It's an unusual path, but its experiences, I've had to, you name an issue or a problem, even name it, that's being talked about on the national stage, we had to deal with it.
Right.
Even issues that you think are veterans issues. In my city, you know, African Americans, Latinos, as I said, my city's about 85% black and Latino. They serve in the military often at higher rates. And they come home, and what happened? We sing that song, "We're the home of the brave," and then you see veterans' homelessness issues. The mayors have to deal with those issues. And so I created New Jersey's first ever one-stop for veterans coming home to make sure you don't have to navigate a Byzantine labyrinth through all your services. Mayors are some of the most ingenious people in politics. I said that to a mayor I talked to yesterday from the Midwest. I mean, we have to solve problems. We can't point fingers. We can't throw stones. At the end of the day, the buck stops with us. And we found creative ways to transform Newark, New Jersey.
And New Jersey, it looks like a micro sense of the United States.
The whole state really is.
It really is.
Yeah, we've got farm areas, we've got city areas, we've got suburban areas. We really are a very good picture of America.
When JR asked you about Barack Obama, sitting from our position on radio, people now, after Barack Obama, criticize Barack Obama, saying he did not do enough for black people. You are the American dream for black people, but Barack, you did not do enough for black people. Cory Booker,
Yes,
you
sir.
are the American dream for black people. What are you going to do for black people
Black
so that they
people.
feel you looked out for us?
So one thing is, judge me about what I'm going to do, about what I've already done.
Okay.
So as I told you, the first thing I did was move to Newark, New Jersey in a black community.
Brick City.
And I have stayed there for decades. I moved into the projects for almost a decade, fighting for my community. Number two, we turned the city around. And now we have a majority black city in America that is rising, especially shout out to Ras Baraka, the new mayor, who's just doing an incredible job. But as soon as I got to Washington, I told you I was number 4. I was the only black person in the whole Democratic caucus at that point. The first thing I did is you can't just say, hey, I'm here and be a black face in a traditionally white space. You have to make sure that you are changing things. So the first thing I did is join with a great senator from Hawaii, Brian Schatz, to say, this place isn't diverse enough. There should be black folks in the room when it happens.
Yeah.
You have places like the Judiciary Committee, you just asked about that, making decisions about that often disproportionately affect African Americans. I got Chuck Schumer to work with us and say every Democratic senator has to report how many minorities they have on their staff.
Okay.
And as soon as they were accountability, guess what happened? The more black people are being hired. Then I started taking on the issues. I couldn't understand why things like sickle cell anemia don't get the funding that other diseases and conditions get that affect less people. Fought and passed a bill for that. HBCUs. I am here because of HBCUs. I have parents and grandparents that went to HBCUs, so fought and passed bills to increase funding and opportunity to HBCUs. I stood up and said, we're going to take on criminal justice reform. The bill that I led and got passed that changed that crack cocaine, powder cocaine disparity, making it retroactive, thousands of people will be released. 90% of them are black. And
so reparations. And then Jade goes to the next question. Reparations. To it.
Jade is my sister. You have to understand.
Hey.
Okay.
We both understand that there's a guy out in South Central that says that he's called the Guerrilla Gardener, Ron Finley. He says in South Central we got drive-bys and drive-throughs, and the drive-throughs are killing more people than the drive-bys.
You understand?
And so your lifestyle choices that you're making at a time when black lives are being taken disproportionately for heart disease, for diabetes, for you to have a lifestyle where you don't preach, but you try to live a way that promotes health and well-being. That's important in our community. So
Senator Cory Booker is here.
So
I
let's
ask
go
you
to
a question.
reparations. Yes.
Senator Cory Booker is here. He wants to be the next president of the United States. Reparations.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people are talking about it.
Right.
How do you see it?
Well, I'm leading about it. I am the senator that has the bill in the Senate that says it's a mirror of the bill in the House brought by members of the Congressional Black Caucus, of which I'm a member, that says enough of this talk. We need to create a national commission to bring together the best minds to figure out how we're going to deal with not just the legacy of slavery, because as soon as slavery, the post-Reconstruction period, a period of domestic terror like we've never seen, thousands of people killed, lynched, beaten. After that, the period of post-Reconstruction went into deep Jim Crow, where some of the laws that were designed to help millions of Americans go into the middle class excluded African Americans from major developments like Levittown that didn't let blacks go to mortgage laws, redlining. You had Social Security designed to exclude professions where blacks were. I can go on with the history, not to mention some of the forgotten history about forced sterilizations of African Americans, Tuskegee syphilis experiment, the bombing of Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. All of these things up until perhaps one of the most oppressive systems of inequality we've ever seen, called mass incarceration, the new Jim Crow, as Michelle Alexander calls it, where we have a system of a drug war, which is not a war on drugs, it's been a war on people, disproportionately poor people, mentally ill, addicted, and African Americans and Latinos. And why that's stunning is because I started with slavery, right? Well, now we have, because there's no difference between blacks and whites in America for using drugs or even dealing drugs, but blacks are almost 4 times more likely to be arrested for it.
Yeah.
But now as a result of that disproportionate system, we have more African Americans under criminal supervision, jail, prison, probation, parole than all the slaves in 1865.
New slaves.
Jade?
So my point is we've got to bring this country together, study these issues, and find a way to create true equality of opportunity. And this conversation can't be had without talking about the persistence of white supremacy and bigotry in our country that's being baked into many of our policies. Because if you just listen to the way we talk about each other, dehumanizing people, it almost creates an environment where you can put children in solitary confinement, where you can shoot unarmed black people because you've dehumanized them. And so if we don't deal with the issue of a persistent issue of racism and bigotry in our country, then this time it might be the new Jim Crow of mass incarceration. What's it going to be next time? And when you listen to the media, black protesters are thugs. When you listen to your politics about these tired tropes of welfare queens or Willie Horton, these are things that show you the persistence of race in our society. You even have white big city police officers, police chiefs talking about we've got to do something about implicit racial bias in policing. So this has got to be a larger conversation. That's why I'm leading the bill in the United States Senate.
I would like to talk about voter suppression because we live in Georgia and we dealt with it firsthand with Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. And so how do you reinstate the faith in the voting process for black people, for millennials, for skeptics who feel like our voices aren't actually being heard when the powers that be have the control to suppress our voice and our vote?
So that's the theme of my trip here to Atlanta. I had a meeting yesterday with students from many different college campuses to talk about two themes: voter suppression and the assault on women's reproductive rights. And so we have a country right now, and this is what gets me about people who don't vote. Okay. I'm like, you are doing exactly what they want you to do. Because they are now designing systems in gerrymandering, in voter ID laws, voter purging, all designed. In fact, a judge in North Carolina, on their schemes, since the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of the Supreme Court was taken away, they said your voting schemes were designed with surgical-like precision, that was the quote, to disenfranchise African Americans.
Wow.
And what you all saw here in Georgia, in the Stacey Abrams campaign, where the guy who was supposed to be the referee, he was a referee now and also a player on the court.
Exactly.
Calling his own fouls and putting his finger on the scale. That should be offensive to every American sense of democratic integrity.
All right.
And so I'm going to stop this as president. We are going to have an end to the partisan gerrymandering that disenfranchises so many Americans. We are going to have an end to these kind of purges. We're going to have a Justice Department that investigates these things, holds folks accountable. I'm fighting to make voting day a democratic day, holiday, a national holiday, to have early voting, mail-in voting, to do the kind of things we know, automatic voter registration, that actually open up the doors to greater participation, what we all should be wanting for this democracy. Because the greater participation, the more vibrant our democracy, the more likely we're going to have people in office that do what we want them to do and not what the powerful, the wealthy, the corporations do. And what we see right now with the assault, the outright assault in the state of Georgia on women's reproductive rights.
The heartbeat bill.
Which violates what over 70% of Georgians want. Because you don't have people that really represent the interests of folks. And it's an assault on women's health and the ability for women to control their own bodies and make their own medical decisions. So these are the things you get, this distortions of democracy that you get when you suppress voting rights.
Let's go to the phones. I have Jasmine on hold. She has a question on line 1. Jasmine, good morning. You're on with Senator Cory Booker.
Good morning, Morning Culture, and Senator Booker.
Good morning, Jasmine.
I just wanted to know why it seems like when there's an upcoming presidential election, the Democratic Party can never seem to get on the same page and elect or maybe support the most qualified candidates collectively versus like 9 million of the Democrats coming out and saying that they're going to run for president.
All right, let's ask that question.
Well, look, I actually think primaries are good things. I wouldn't be sitting here if I wasn't challenging the machine in Newark. And if the Democratic Party had its way, I would never have been mayor of the city of Newark. There's an Oscar-nominated documentary about my fight to beat the machine in Newark called Street Fight. It was beat by a movie called March of the Penguins in the Oscars. we won't talk about that. But I hope people will go on Netflix and see it, because if we just let the Democratic Party, the governor was against me, the whole powers that be stopped us trying to fight to make change in Newark. So I think primaries actually are good things, and they're a battle of ideas. And right now, voters have a choice. I'm very unique in this field. I was a chief executive of a major city, and then I was a United States senator. I have both experiences, and I'm different by voice. You know, a lot of people in our party right now want to fight fire with fire. I ran a fire department. That's really not a good strategy. I don't think we win this election by getting on Trump's turf, fighting him in the gutter like he wants on his terms. I think this election's got to be about love. Now, what do I mean by that? Patriotism is love of country. You cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. Mm-hmm. Love says that we are invested in this together. Love says we need each other. Love says if your children don't have a great public education, then my children are bereft of their genius and their opportunity. We've gotten to a point now where Americans are hating each other just because of our parties. We can't find common ground, even though we have a common cause. And we've gotten to a point now where people say the biggest ideal in America, we're a tolerant nation. Go home tonight and tell somebody you live with that you tolerate them and see if that's a compliment. We need to aspire to create that beloved community again. And the way you beat bullies is the way we beat Bull Connor, not by bringing more powerful fire hoses and bigger dogs, but by challenging the moral imagination of this country, by bringing this nation to a higher ground of moral purpose. This is what this election, I think, is how you beat Donald Trump. And what this nation really needs is a leader that's going to put more indivisible back in this one nation under God.
We've had people call in when we asked the question, do you like Donald Trump, on this urban radio station?
Yes, sir.
A lot of our listeners said no, but I voted for him because of border protection and saving our jobs. A lot of black folks said that since Donald Trump's been in office, I've gotten more construction jobs, I've gotten more of these jobs, I've gotten all of that. So that is an issue. How do you solve that border control issue that is so demanding on this country?
Well, first of all, you don't deal with it by trying to be a fearmonger. The way he talks about people coming to our country, the dehumanization is outrageous. You don't deal with it by violating the values of this nation, separating families, putting children in cages. You don't deal with it by, here in Atlanta, creating an atmosphere where your local police have a challenge. There's ICE agents showing up at schools and courts.
Yeah.
I ran a local police, and my cops are like, in Newark, are like, the communities aren't even cooperating us because they're afraid of us to give us information. We need to solve crimes and stop things happening. Donald Trump's policies are making us less safe, and they're actually economically hurting us. Let me tell you, we can protect our border, which we must do. We don't need to do it with a wall, which even the people down there, I've talked to them, say we don't need. You can use zones and sensors and other ways to protect this country and secure our border, which we must do. But I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be pushing bipartisan immigration reform, because I know the bill that the Senate passed in 2013, right before I came there, the Congressional Budget Office, Independent Budget Office, said that would have taken $1 trillion off of our debt, because it would have brought people out of the shadows, got them to pay taxes. And people don't realize this, but immigration is actually a boost to our economy. Take these dreamers. These are folks that don't even know the country they came from. Many of them never visited there, don't speak the language, but they're in our country since they were 1, 2, 3 years old. I brought one to the State of the Union who started a tech platform that employed about 400 to 800 people given the time. People can go in there, get jobs, and we want to deport her? Immigration is a source of our strength. I was just in Iowa talking to farmers who were like, we need the agricultural workers. I had the president of Stanford University, my university, his office called, the president of the university will be in Washington. He wants to see you. I got panicked because I'm like, oh my God, did I not graduate? Did I not pass that last class? And he comes in to see me. He goes, yo, Cory. He didn't say that like that because he's the president of Stanford University. So he's like, Senator Booker. We have people that are graduating Stanford, immigrants that come to our country, the best minds on the planet Earth. They get degrees in things that half of Congress probably can't spell. And then as soon as their student visa's up, we drop kick them out of our country, as opposed to doing what we used to say is, hey, we want the brightest minds. Give us you're tired, you're hungry. People are going to come here, start businesses, come up from Jamaica, got 3-4 things going on that are building our economy, coming up from Nigeria, coming from South America. All these folks are contributing to our economy. They're more likely to start businesses. They're more likely to have their, I can go through the data that shows they build our economy. So we need to have strong borders, legal immigration, and not demagoguery that often points fingers at the wrong problem. You know where the majority of illegal immigration, undocumented immigration comes from? Visa overstays, not from our southern border.
Senator Cory Booker is our guest. He's vying to be the next president. We are going to line number 2. I have James from Tucker on. James, go right ahead. James,
I liked your question, man. I thought when I saw your question was about marijuana, I was like, you were talking to the man.
Well, that's what he wants to know, Jade.
Reform.
Well, yeah. Tell us your stance on medical marijuana.
Listen, when I first came to the Senate, I put a stake in the ground on medical marijuana, on legalizing marijuana, because I know the war on marijuana is a war on people, disproportionately low-income people, disproportionately black and brown people. It is not for me. I've never drank alcohol in my life. I've never smoked marijuana. To me, this is about justice.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is in 2017, there were more marijuana convictions for possession than there were all violent crimes combined.
Insane.
So we have guys walking around Atlanta who have a criminal conviction for possession of marijuana at a time when 2 of the last 3 presidents admitted to doing the same thing. In fact, Bush and Obama, read Obama's book, they admitted to doing more serious drugs. We know that we do not have equal application of the marijuana laws. And now people are moving. I'm leading the charge to legalize marijuana on the federal level, but I don't stop there. My bill is called the Marijuana Justice Act, and I've got a chip on my shoulder for all these states that are out there legalizing marijuana, and you're not talking in the same bill about expunging the records of people who have been disproportionately targeted and convicted for those crimes.
Yeah,
So you now have in America people trying to get jobs denied, people trying to get loans from banks denied, people trying to get business licenses denied. In New Jersey, you can't get a taxi license. For crimes that now senators and Congress people openly admit that they did when they were in college or in their younger days. It is so unjust and unfair. So I'm going to continue to lead on this issue, but I'm calling folks out who are legalizing marijuana and allowing a whole bunch of wealthy people to come in and get those businesses.
Right.
All right.
Look at the people who have marijuana disproportionately. It is not black and brown people, and women are not getting these businesses. So we need to create, if we're going to create a multi-billion-dollar empire businesses in our country, we need to make sure those business opportunities, people have equal chance to get to the table, to get those business opportunities, access to capital to run those businesses, especially when they're in urban communities.
Okay.
We need to make sure we're expunging records. And the last thing is the tax revenue. We should be reinvesting in those communities that were disproportionately targeted in the first place for education, job training, and the kind of things that, we'd have 20% less poverty in America if we had incarceration rates the same as our industrial peers, because when you target certain communities, you take away thousands and thousands of their hardworking people who now can't get the kind of jobs to support their families because they're carrying a past conviction.
All right, you're in Atlanta. We got to wrap, but you're in Atlanta, Georgia. Uh-huh. Are you meeting with Stacey Abrams?
So Stacey and I go way back.
Way back.
Way back. We've known each other since law school days, and she's a dear friend. And so she and I were texting before I came down here. I don't think I'll see her on this trip, but I want to tell everybody who can listen to me, I've met politicians all across this country. Everybody's now jumping in running for president. Yeah. but I have not met anybody that can say this about. She's one of the most impressive human beings I've ever met, period. That sister is anointed by God. She's called. I'm praying that she runs for something. President, governor, United States senator. She is so qualified, so capable, has a proven track record of getting things done, working across the aisle. And so I've already told Stacey, I'm in your corner. I helped considerably, tried to do everything I could to help her when she was running for governor. I just think that God she's really one of those people touched. She's anointed, and I love her a lot.
Okay.
And I'm going to support her in her future endeavors.
Jade and I were going to ask you this question as well. I just had my fundraiser for my kids' foundation.
Yes.
We deal a lot with climate change.
Absolutely.
Yes,
and
sir.
taking kids around the world.
Yes,
so we
sir.
did the Galapagos, the Amazon, Alaska. We're doing a scuba trip this year.
Oh, my gosh.
What's your take on climate change and the term global warming?
When you said, what's my take? I want to say, take me with you.
And even further than that, was your choice to go vegan, did that have anything to do with your views on climate change?
So my views on, if I'm your president, we are going to reverse this Trump attack on so many of the things the Obama administration did. We're going to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords. We're going to reverse his rules on methane and reverse his rules on fuel efficiency standards. But I'm going to do more than that, because we've got to lead this nation on the planet Earth and showing what we can do to make sure that this 10 to 12 year window we have to act. Look at these military reports that talk about if we don't act within 25 years, this planet is going to be descending into peril.
Say that.
And by the way, the first people often hurt are those vulnerable communities.
Yeah.
And you see in my city, asthma rates as the heat rises, higher temperatures, more likely to be affected. It's vulnerable people are going to feel this first. So I feel a sense of urgency because that window is closing to stand and do dramatic things. And again, I got a record. When I was mayor, I didn't wait for the federal government to do things. I said, we're going to take responsibility in the city, and I'm going to show you we can create win-win-wins. We environmentally retrofitted buildings. We lowered our energy costs. We got African Americans, Latinos, Newark residents jobs and union jobs, kids in apprenticeship programs. You can do this in a way that's going to expand our economy, to create jobs, deal with the climate crisis, and put America back in a leadership position, because we only produce 14% of the globe's greenhouse causing gases. We've got to lead in this country, in this planet, so other countries join us in the fight. To your vegan question, I just want you to know I was an athlete. And I found that I moved to become a vegetarian, and my performance just improved. There's so much misinformation out there about diet and health.
Yes.
And I'm hoping people will just, I don't preach anybody what you eat. That's your freedoms. I just want folks to live in accordance to their values and what's best for their lifestyle and well-being. And I really ask people at a time that diabetes is becoming epidemic, at a time that heart disease is becoming epidemic, do the things in your life that make sure that you have a long life, because God wants us to have life and have it more abundantly.
Amen.
And you one of the most important things is that you can do to have an abundant, long life is what's at the end of your fork. So just think about that. Make decisions that are best for you. Vegans definitely have lower carbon footprints.
Okay.
Senator Cory Booker, everybody.
You all, thank you for letting me come on.
Thank you
Be
so
part of your
much.
community here.
I have so many more questions. I wish we could have you all day.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you,
very
Cory
much,
Booker,
guys.
everybody. It's the Morning Culture on the People's Station. You say it. Say it's the Morning Culture.
It's the Morning Culture on the People's Station, V-103. I look forward to coming back.